In the richest nation in the world, our children's well-being, measured across multiple dimensions, ranks 19th out of 20 rich nations. Why that is and what we can do about it matters. To this child, to all of our children, and to the future of our society.
We talk a good game in this country about being family friendly, but in providing for the economic and social needs of families, we are woefully behind other countries.
Want to show Daddy a book?
In today's day, we all gotta work. And I can remember back in like my grandfather's days, the men work, the woman stay home and take care of the house and, family and things like that. In today's day, it surely can't happen. Everybody gotta go out and work and, bring it in.
Very good. Yeah, you're gonna show Daddy
Yeah,
a
he
book?
works a split
Very
shift.
good.
So like 2 in the afternoon to 1, 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm on nights this week. And so the next week though, I'll be on days.
Americans now work more hours than every other rich nation, yet the middle class is shrinking. Social mobility is less than it was 50 years ago. And most damning, 1 in 4 of our children is born into poverty.
David, tomorrow's a really hectic day. I have a training. I have to be there at 9 o'clock.
70% of our children are growing up in families headed by working parents.
I bring work home with me, and it's not required. It's just what I do so that I don't feel as overwhelmed.
Things just barely work out. Like feeling security. I don't really know what that feels like, to feel like, all right, we're good.
That way, no, you silly girl.
I wake up in the morning and I'm on.
It's like, where's my other child?
And then I go to work and I'm on.
You have a good day, little one.
And then I come home and then I'm on until the kids go to sleep.
There's 4 different places that everyone needs to be in.
It's too much. I can't do it.
Our policies actually actively discourage parents from being able to take care of those kids well in their prenatal months, in their early years, and getting them ready for school.
Among the world's richest nations, the United States is the only country that fails to provide guaranteed paid maternal leave on the birth of a child.
It took 9 years to get unpaid leave. That's disgusting.
40% of all American mothers are working within 3 months of their baby's birth. Some because they want to, most because they have to.
Our child care expenses, now that we have a second child, it's way more than we spend on our mortgage.
Among rich nations, our child care ranks 16th in affordability, 22nd in quality.
I picked him up one day and I went to change him and his bum was bleeding. So we left there right at that point.
We rank 31st in availability of child care.
So this is our wait list, and this is the wait list just for infants and toddlers.
If I'm not there, I'm entrusting someone else to keep her safe, to teach her, to help her grow in all areas, developmentally, spiritually, because we can't do it alone,
Once you imagine that every family stands on its own, you're really making it impossible to create a national vision of everyone doing well together.
A lot of us buy into this idea that a parent is the one responsible for their child's development and their outcomes.
Go ahead, Lily. What are you thankful for?
My mommy and my daddy.
But let's just step back for a moment and just look at what exactly the reality is for a child. So you have a child who's an individual with their biology and their genetics and their personality characteristics. And they're nested in their family, their peers, their close social relationships. But that is nested within another level, which is your school, your community institutions, your neighborhood. And that level is nested within our culture, our laws, our policies, our social structures, our systems. As a society, where do we see the role of our policies? Isn't part of that role to help children to grow and develop?
The business community of the United States has always shaped the big policy priorities of the country, the big political priorities of the country. The lobbying power of the next generation is next to nil. And as a consequence, our society steadily and relentlessly underinvests in kids. We shouldn't be surprised if so many of our children arrive at kindergarten unready to begin school. And we shouldn't be surprised that so many of our kids can't graduate from high school.
In 1970, the United States was #1 in the world in high school and college graduation rates. Today, we've fallen to 15th in college completion, 21st in high school graduation.
High school graduation rate, we know, is strongly related to things that occur long before high school. Can you write your name?
My name starts with an A.
There's your A. So reading in 3rd grade, the reading level is a strong predictor of whether or not you're going to graduate from high school. Well, what predicts reading in 3rd grade?
Mama!
Yes, sweetheart.
What is it?
The number of words you know when you're between the ages of 2 and 3. Oh, so what predicts the number of words you know when you're 2 or 3 years old?
Are you happy?
So we can keep tracking back.
Want to see the doctor?
Beginning from the moment of birth, 700 new synapses are being formed every single second in all parts of the brain that basically become the architecture and the foundation of who we are as people.
We knew that effect, but so they took away nesting material.
Exciting new neuroscience research makes it clear. Early experiences get under our baby's skin and can alter the wiring of their developing brains, for better or for worse.
You can see these processes in mice, you can see these processes in monkeys, and in the human data too, in young kids.
Very few of us remember what we experienced when we were babies or toddlers. But the brain remembers, the body remembers.
At a biological level, how does something that happens to you so early in life stick with you, persist forever, for a lifetime?
Everything kind of starts from the bottom up. If we don't do it right early, it's harder later. We pay more for it later, and we don't get as good an outcome.
The evidence is in. When we increase the time, income, and resources for parents and caregivers of young children, we help build a solid foundation for lifelong development, better learning, earning, and physical and mental health.
Not just one study, there are actually 4 independent longitudinal studies on early ed, all getting very, very high annual rates of return. Most of these benefits are public benefits.
All right, so what other sounds does animals make?
The part of this argument that I like the most is the social equality aspect of it. What's socially fair is also economically efficient. So if you were a government or somebody asking, where should I put my money? In the stock market or in a young child? You'd say, in a young child. Because you're going to get a bigger payback in terms of earnings of the child, in terms of reduced crime, reduced incarceration, reduced litany of social problems.
If you would ask, what really matters for kids when they're very young? I mean, what do we all want for our children? We want them to be happy and healthy and thriving. We want them to be growing and learning and being all they can be. This is a core value that we all share. The problem is that we don't all share a commitment to that for everybody's kids.
Fox and Socks, our game is done.
There's never been a societal problem or issue where we have had so much information and done so little with it. Between the neuroscience and the economic literature, and there's just this explosion of information that no one is disputing, but we're still not acting on it.
Okay, you want me to give you a hug? You need a hug right now?
We don't just have an achievement gap in this country, we have a policy gap.
We need to be investing in the early years.
Today we have three very esteemed panelists who are going to be with us for a little bit this morning. We're mindful of your time and that you are still at work, so we want to give our panelists each about 3 minutes to respond to the two questions that we have for them, and then we may have time to entertain some questions from you all. So we'll see how that works out. So this morning we have Mayor Rosalynn Bliss of the City of Grand Rapids. It's good to have you with us, Mayor. We have Annemarie Valdez, who's the Executive Director of First Steps, and we have Candace Cowling, who's the Executive Director of Family Futures. And each of them were asked to prepare a response to the following two questions. From each of their perspective, what is the current environment in Kent County around early childhood, and what future efforts do they each have planned around early childhood issues? So we're going to go in the order that they're seated.
All right, well, thank you. I'm really delighted to be here. Is that on? Am I good? Can everyone hear me okay? So I'm so glad I can be here. This is the first time I've seen this film, and what a compelling film. You know, when I think about the state of Kent County, I think this film really represents every community throughout our entire country, including Kent County. You know, it's just the faces of the families and the children are different. What brings me hope, and I think it's probably why I do this work, in addition to serving as mayor of this incredible city, I'm also a social worker, and I work at Dia Lodge at St. John's. And what brings me an incredible amount of hope is that we live in a community where you have incredible people really committed to making life better for everyone, including children and families. So I think, oh, thank you. I can tell that's different. So you know, the struggles, I think, are similar to what we saw in this film. It's the poverty and the access to opportunity and the access to quality childcare and the stresses that so many of our families in our community wrestle with every single day. But as I said, what brings me hope is you have all of these individuals in our community who are committed to making life better, and you're starting to see a lot of that as organizations come together and align their missions and their objectives and their goals to really see what they can do collectively to make the greatest impact possible. And we're starting to see that, and I know that both of you will talk about that. So when I think about my role as mayor, and when I think about some of the opportunities I have in serving our community and trying to be a part of the great work happening in our community, I see a lot of things, a lot of the systemic issues that were talked about in the film that I'm hoping in this brief amount of time I'm given in this position to have the greatest impact on. So some of the things that we're taking on at the city that I'm hoping to make an impact on, you know, we have significant disparities in this community. We have significant racial disparities. We have a lot of people in our community that don't have access to opportunity. They don't have access to jobs. They don't have access to good education. And so we're taking a look at what can we do as a city to not only change our organization, but to make sure that we're doing everything we can to empower people, but also to start to address and eliminate racial disparities in our community. And we can't do it alone. We're all in this together. This is a community issue, but to me, it's one of the most critical issues in our community. Another issue that impacts families every day, and I've heard so many stories over the last year that I feel like my heart breaks every week, and that is the lack of access to affordable housing. So we have so many families who are struggling with finding affordable housing in this community. And so just recently, the City Commission, we spent a lot of time on our city budget. And for the first time ever, we created an affordable housing trust fund. So that was just passed a couple weeks ago. So we're going to be working through a process to determine what does that look like, what are the policies and the guidelines, and how, again, can we use our resources to have the greatest impact. Another priority for us is to make sure that we have great neighborhoods. You know, that as one of the women in the film said, you know, it's about community, it's about a village, it's about all of us working together to make sure that we're providing a great place for children and families, and that we're supporting families, especially through those tough times. And a lot of that happens in neighborhoods. And so we need our neighborhoods to be great places. We need them to be safe places. We need them to be places where there's opportunity. The other thing is that we need to make sure that we have a good public transit system for families that don't have access to transportation. So I get to serve, as mayor, I get to serve on the transit board, and there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that we have good public transit, and that we have public transit for individuals regardless of the shift that they're working. I've heard from so many families where you have a family member working third shift and they don't have access to public transit, and they have a hard time getting to employment, which, as you know, all of these issues are intricately connected, and so we have to have a really multi-pronged, comprehensive response to addressing the different barriers that different families face. The last one that I'll speak to at the city that I'm really committed to, and that is, I've worked really hard over the last several months to develop a strong relationship with the Grand Rapids Public Schools, but then also to look at ways that we can connect more children to nature, that we can make sure that there are these safe green spaces, that there are playgrounds for children to go and play in a safe neighborhood. And so we're just in the beginning stages of updating our Parks Master Plan. I've said pretty vocally that I want a safe neighborhood and a playground within walking distance of every single child who lives in our city, because I believe that's a place where families can connect and play, and I know play is so critical to child development and to building relationships with families, and we want to make sure that every neighborhood has that for children and families. So those are some of the things at the city that I think we can do, hopefully we can make an impact on, that really ties into all of the other incredible work happening at the county with so many organizations, and I believe that we have a role to play, and so do all of us. We all have a role to play.
Thank you very much. We look forward to hearing more from you and how we can help partner.
Hello, everyone. I just want to say that it's remarkable to see the turnout for this film, and when Matt talked about the history of all the showings and viewings and the attendance, that we are building momentum here to focus on the difference early intervention and early childhood can make in our community. And what I see in Kent County and in the city of Grand Rapids is an amazing partnership coming together of all the providers looking at it from the standpoint of linking arms, working together for our youngest, most vulnerable populations, and then looking at it as a continuum, that it goes up the chain all the way to a viable workforce, people living and thriving in a healthy community. And as the mayor mentioned, green spaces and parks, and how important all of those developmental pieces are for young children and families to have a healthy community. But what I would love to focus on is that landscape that we're currently at, that we have components in Kent County and in the city of Grand Rapids that other communities don't have. So we're far ahead of the game. Everyone's linking arms and looking at collective impact and looking at how we can work together to make an enormous difference in the lives of children and families. So we have entities like Talent 2025, and we have governmental entities that work along with CEOs of businesses to say we can make a huge difference in the lives of our children and families. And we have collective impact groups like K-Connect and First Steps looking at convening and aligning all the partners. So I see bright promise for the future of not only Grand Rapids but also Kent County, because our leadership right now is connected and working on this together.
Thank you, Annemarie.
So this is, I don't know how many times I've actually seen the documentary, a few times now, but I'm struck by it every time I watch it. And actually, I was struck today by listening to the response of a number of you in the audience saying, wow. mean, there's just those moments, and actually I think kind of in the interest of self-care for all of us right now maybe, if you just take maybe 2 or 3 really deep breaths, breathe in and let it out, breathe in and let it out. That was a lot to take in. I mean, it's just so much. And we've talked at the broad policy levels, which is absolutely critical. We do need to start to look in a broader sense. A lot of these are structural issues. But I guess part of what I want to focus on as well is what can we do individually? Because sometimes I think we can look at this and feel like, oh my gosh, this is so darn big. It just, I'm going to do my little thing that I can do and then just kind of try to find some respite somewhere, and I can't take on these bigger issues. But we all have a role to play. We all can make an impact. And you're all doing that in the individual work that you do. I know so many of you looking across the audience are involved on a daily basis in making children's lives better, families' lives better. But I'd encourage you, and one of the things you do have, if you got the program, there's some items in there of things that you can do. In preparing for this, I have a piece of paper on my desk that you know how many early childhood meetings we have in the community and get-togethers and that sort of thing, which is good because we're building that momentum and thickening those networks, as John Powell would refer to it. But this little piece of paper, I went a number of years ago to some sort of early childhood effort, and it said, what can you do? And there was these action steps there that you could pick, and you could pick your own. And I take a look at that periodically, and some of the things it says in there is talk to people who don't look like you or think like you. So I'm reminded that those are the sort of things that I need to do. And so I just challenge each of you to think of their own unique ways that you can, within your sphere of influence, and just even talking about early childhood. Think about the things you learned here today. You probably learned something new. And let that knowledge drive the work that you do and drive the conversations. When you're at a party, when you're at the 4th of July events this weekend, and you have an opportunity, talk about early childhood and how important it is, and listen to others and find out their perspective and what they think and what they know about early childhood as well. Because even in terms of the business piece here, we can't just look at business as, those bad corporate folks. We have to figure out the common ground, because it is in the best interest of of businesses to have children and families succeed, as you see here from economists that are world-renowned talking about that. So I'd encourage you again to think in terms of those individual ways that you can make a difference, and there are so many ways that you can do that.
And what about the future? What can we look forward to in the early childhood in your areas?
Well, I think it does come down to turning economies around, as we've seen in these documentaries, that there are forces out there that are really against the big changes. And when you see the documentary and what they illustrate, the hardship it imposes on all of our young families to find quality childcare, and to make sure that young children and babies are getting stimulating, positive environments in the earliest years, and how this makes a big difference in terms of the economy of your community. And I think that those pieces, bringing in business, thinking about linking arms with the school districts and government, this makes a huge difference. And I think that the movement is building, certainly in our community, but across the country. And I hearken back to something that was illustrated in the documentary about the policymakers in Washington, D.C., who were fighting for child care on different levels, and that is still going on. We actually have been working with the National Women's Law Center, and they recently, through policy and advocacy, were able to have $25 million put into child care on the federal level. It's certainly not enough, but that movement is building.
So I'm going to respect your time, but there's about several hours worth of things we could talk about here probably. Some of the things in terms of the future. I think getting involved and staying connected with each other. It's been a year or so since we've been together in this very room for many of us talking about this. There have been activities over that year. Continue that momentum. There is a website, earlykent.org. It's an opportunity for you to share links for this documentary and others that are more specific and a little shorter in nature. It's an opportunity on there too. There's a feedback loop that you can start to give in terms of what should we be doing in this community. And there's the policy level that we've talked about, so I think we need to be making some policy priorities. Some of that would be state level, some of it's going to be city level, some of it will be even potentially nationally. So I think we need to look at that. We need to start to prioritize and hold folks accountable as well. There's a tremendous amount of rhetoric in especially the political field, and fortunately we do have people who will pick up that baton and follow through and make sure that we're holding our elected officials, and our elected officials are being accountable in areas. So, but we need to continue to do that, and at all levels, and especially there are some issues at the state level that we need to focus on. We're one of the few states that has a flat tax rate, for instance, and I think we need to look closely at that and see what the implications of that are. Locally in Kent County, one of the big issues that we've been having conversations, and we talked a little bit about it last year, I think, as well, is the idea that financially we have a $35 million gap in terms of early childhood supports and services, that we know that if we invested that money, we would be making that, making the return on investment like the economist talked about. So looking at an early childhood millage for this community, I think, is absolutely critical. And for that to be successful, we need to pull in people who are not just the usual suspects. We're going to have to build on all of the great work that you do, but we're going to need to have other allies in this effort as well. And then again, I'd say I'd bring it back to that individual level of coming up with your own sort of charge of what you can do, and keep expanding that. Keep learning. This knowledge of early childhood is growing, and one of the other things is I really think we have to become a trauma-informed community. We need to know throughout this community what the implications are of trauma, and do everything we can so that everybody is empowered to be able to use that knowledge in a way that ultimately will result in children reaching their full potential.
All right, I'm going to add one more thing to that. And it's because I'm elected, but also because of that clip in the film of Richard Nixon. I mean, there are already reasons I didn't like him, and now I really don't like him. But you know what every single one of you can do, and I know you're going to write a commitment, every single one of you can vote. And you can find out what candidates support policies that support families and children. So my hope for the future, especially as I look back on the past, and not only the missed opportunities by former presidents and elected officials, the damage that was done because of decisions that they made, that we now have to be a part of changing. And what my hope is for the future is that every single one of you become more engaged civically, because decisions are made every single day at the local level, state level, and federal level. And there are decisions being made that impact our lives, but also the lives of children, and the children that we want to have a better and brighter future. And what it takes is it takes time, it takes paying attention, it takes getting involved, it takes stepping up. Not saying you have to run for office, but support people who are gonna support policies and practices that support families and children. But then also figure out ways that you can get involved. You don't have to run for office to sit around a table where important decisions are being made. So step up, put yourself out there. I know it can be intimidating. Trust me, I know how intimidating the political process can be, but it's really not that scary once you get involved. So that's my hope for the future, to see all of you engaged at a policy level.
Thank you, and that's a great segue. There is a wonderful group that exists here in Grand Rapids. It's Michigan Power to Thrive, or Kent County Power to Thrive, which is a part of a broader statewide effort out of Lansing, Michigan. If you are not aware of who they are, you should get to know them. One group that was formed here in Kent County out of our Kent County Power to Thrive was Grand Rapids Homes for All. So you need to be listening for these names coming up in your community, because these are some of the things that you can get involved in individually. You can look at things like the minimum wage efforts that are taking place here in town. There are things happening. We just have to make sure we engage. And I know, just from my Strong Beginnings hat, I could hear the community health workers and social workers in the room going, what about the social determinants of health? What about housing? What about better jobs? What about those kinds of things for our community? members and those that we serve personally. And those are some of the efforts. Grand Rapids Homes for All is working diligently to make sure that with a lot of the gentrification that's happening and some movement that's taking place downtown, that we're not losing affordable housing for our clients. And there are some other things going on. So we want you to keep your ears perked and your eyes open. Perform your civic duties. Make sure you get out and rock the vote. And we are looking forward to seeing you again in the future. If there are any burning questions, we would encourage you to get down here to Brianna, and we'll try to filter at least 2, maybe 3. But they have to be burning questions, and they should be concise for our panelists. And if you have one, if you can start making your way that way. But won't you join me in thanking our panelists for their comments this morning? Thank you. And even while she is coming down, if you will just pull out your pamphlet that you received today, your program, on the back there is a portion that says Take Action. And there are several different things that you can do that we've listed here. Share the Raising of America, this film. Go on accesskent.org and register, and you'd have access to these video clips for free. And we would be happy to make sure that that is available to you, and that address is on here as well. Contact your local representatives and let them know about the issues that matter to you specifically, as our mayor has stressed today. And then tell others what you have learned about the importance of early childhood. We need you to be active and vocal. Did you have the question? Awesome. I'll just repeat the question. It was anything that our panelists can add about to serve children with special needs within our community.
Yeah, I mean, access, and particularly access to individuals with special needs and children with special needs is absolutely a top priority to us. And we're doing that in different ways at the city. One is with park space, making sure that that's accessible. But also—
Let me interrupt you just one second while people are leaving.
Yeah,
if
sure.
you can leave your commitment cards here, that would be awesome. I know some of you have to get back to work, but the Take Action card, if you can fill that out and leave it with us, the personal commitment card, we encourage you to fill out and take with you so that you can remember what it was you said you were going to do. I'm sorry.
No, that is fine. I'll just add one more thing. A responsibility of the city is infrastructure, and so infrastructure is really important too for access. So we're looking at ways to make sure that our streets are safe, our sidewalks are safe for everyone, and that they're accessible. So we're working on a number of different things around transit and parks to make sure that that's a top priority.
And just one thing I would add to that then, in addition to kind of the policy and structural things, one of the things I think we can do better in the community, and you can do this through the work that you're doing, is connect parents of kiddos with special needs with each other. We hear time and time again that parents need that sort of support network and someone who's going through similar experiences. And I think the Parent Coalition is also another place, the Great Start Parent Coalition, where you can connect to other parents as well. And then with Early On, there are some opportunities. So just getting the word out in terms of some of the resources that already do exist here as well is also very important.
Did you have another? Individual organizations and what they're doing, and with the family leave policy.
I'm not sure what all organizations are doing. I know our organization, we allow family leave and leave bank time and accumulation of time saved up. I can't speak to other organizations. I have found in my personal work in the field, there is some value in working for a nonprofit that is very supportive of families, because they tend to have family-friendly policies and a ton of support for employees, especially employees who are parents.
I would just add that, as Denise mentioned, if this documentary got you fired up, then this is the time to start working toward those policies and linking arms, joining together, and making sure that it becomes more universal than what was shown in the Raising of America.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think the other thing too is in terms of I don't know a lot about specifically what's happened in terms of individually, but that's part of the issues. We look at these things individually, and some of these it is so difficult for organizations to just go ahead and kind of take that initiative on their own. We need to create an infrastructure in which there's more collective and shared responsibility in making sure those policies are in place, and that small organizations like our own can be supported in that, as well as the larger organizations who can typically more afford to do that because it's spread across a larger employee pool. So I think that's one of the areas we also have to look at it broader than just the individual organizations. And another piece I would add to that, though, that on an individual level, somewhat related, is some of the work that organizations are doing to examine their policies related to equity, because I think equity goes hand in glove with issues that impact families. So there are a number of organizations that are looking at it from that perspective.
Thanks for saying that. As moderator, I feel like I can't put too much out there, but yes, health equity and social justice are very important to the heart of many of those partner organizations that you saw listed earlier. So we thank you for your time again. We thank our mayor for coming out with us, Annemarie and Candace for coming out and serving us today, and thank all of you for spending some time with us this morning.
Thanks, Denise.